Well, I just got back from a birthday party. Sorry if I'm a bit sweaty. It's like 100 million degrees outside here in Texas. Also, yesterday, I saw Thor, Love and Thunder. Let's talk about it. Okay, so, right off the bat, I know it's been a while since I've done a movie review. It is what it is. I'm going to talk about the good things because I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the bad things and talking about a lot of the things I think needed to be fixed with this movie. Sorry, I realize there's a light turned off. So, right off the bat, the movie is very pretty. Special effects all look great. So the areas of like super high contrast in the shadow realm, as it's called. Yes, that's what we do. We're playing Yu-Gi-Oh now. They look great. The fights look pretty good. There's some good action in the movie. I say good because it's not great. Acting is mostly good. I mean, none of the performances feel phoned in. There's a but with this, but I'm talking about the good things as it is. The runtime wasn't ridiculous. That's a good thing. Natalie Portman came back. That's a great thing, actually. Not gonna lie. Glad to see Jane Foster back on the screen, if only for a short while. Because if you're familiar with the Mighty Thor story, you know. And by the way, this will be a spoiler review. So, the movie's been out now for at least a weekend. But there's your warning. If you haven't seen more than just the trailer, go ahead and skip a good chunk of this. But overall, talking about it in general, without going into too many spoilers, how do I put this? I don't know if I like this movie. I don't. I feel very neutral about it because at least in the earlier parts of the movie, there's a lot of comedy that I actually laughed at. There's a lot of stuff that's funny. But then it gets old. Even when they try to do something serious, they always come back to humor. Usually then followed up by an action sequence, followed by more humor. And then if they try to have a serious scene, it's usually broken up by humor. The interactions between some of the interactions between characters, I guess, are fine, except for the fact that there's not a single person in this movie taking this movie serious, except for the bad guy. In fact, okay, sorry, I missed a positive there. Christian Bale as Gore, fantastic. He is giving 110% throughout this movie, and I feel the only areas where it lacked was where he was forced to do dumb things, so to speak. Even the battles with him were kind of intense. They do show his power and strength and the abilities of the Necro Sword, which they can't call it all black, the Necro Sword, weapon of Null, because we can't have Null in this universe yet, till Sony will finally give up Venom properly, even though we kind of have Venom in here now. By the way, they retcon. Well, actually, they don't really give you the history of the Necro Sword, so I guess they haven't retconned anything. However, they do adapt the Gore the God Butcher storyline and the Mighty Thor storyline, even though the Mighty Thor storyline took place because of Gore the God Butcher story. And they just sort of overlap and intertwine them, but one is not given as the reason for the other, and I think that would have been a much better way to go. Normally, when it comes to MCU stuff, I give it the benefit of the doubt and I say, it's not like the comics, it's fine. This is a case where this movie should have stuck closer to the comics. I think that Gore should have looked more alien. I know that Taika Waititi didn't want to go there with like removing Christian Bale's nose and stuff like that, but Gore doesn't really look human. If you look at it, like, I'll pull up an image here of Gore from the comics and then Christian Bale. This just looks like Christian Bale in pale skin with some stripes put on him, and then later scarred up after everything. Because at least the Necro Sword does corrupt you wholly. So they got that part right. They got the creatures that he can summon right. And in fact, they changed it because no longer can we keep it related to symbiotes. It just becomes connected to the shadow realm. They're shadow creatures, which I guess is, from what a video I saw earlier, is a callback to some other stuff at some point. So they can technically call it comic booky because it's related to something. It's just not related to this story. And the other thing is, this movie was in a hurry. The pacing was terrible. It was just... And even like the slowdown parts were like screeching halts and diversions, but were such a massive pace change. Like every now and then, spoiler section here, after the kids get kidnapped from New Asgard, Gore doesn't really torture them, but he does have this really cool scene where Christian Bale does an incredible version of the Joker. And if you watch this movie, you might agree with me. His Gore is a fantastic Joker. It's great. So, honestly, if you need a new Joker, pull back on Christian Bale. Because honestly, I'd do it. Just be like, play Gore, but we're going to keep you there. It's fine. But his motivations are fine because it's set up just like comics. The gods abandoned him. His whole planet died. He died. He ends up running into, in this case, he runs into his god, who had just killed the previous owner of the Necro Sword and barely got out with his own life. Made fun of everything Gore went through, was just basically a shithead. Gore kills him. It corrupts him, and he goes on his killing spree for all of the gods across the galaxy. Just wherever. How he knows what gods are where and what to do? No clue. Except maybe the Necro Sword knows because it is old. It seems to have sentience. It calls to him. It talks to him. That kind of stuff. But we get nothing else out of that. But this movie's in a hurry. All of Gore's backstory was about 10 minutes of the movie. From him nearly dying, nearly being dead, and his daughter dying, to finding this oasis with this god, to getting the sword, to killing that god, to all gods must die. 10 minutes. And then we get Thor's backstory up until now. From Endgame till now is about another 6 minutes, I think, of exposition dump from Korg. And it's some of its backstory, some of it's the in-between, his time with the Guardians, stuff like that. And it establishes the entire opening battle scene with Thor on this world, with the Guardians, all this stuff establishes that Thor has no identity at all anymore. He's sort of doing good, except that he's working with the Guardians, who are at best anti-heroes. Most of the time they're criminals. They might be doing good things, but they're usually criminals therein. You know, much like in Firefly. Good guys doing bad things, but not really doing bad, as it were. And you see a moment where Thor has been repeating the same shtick over and over again. They kind of try to, even though they're doing a good thing, they're helping out these people with an issue on their planet. They're kind of playing a role. They're playing the good guys. And Thor is like the guy who doesn't want to help them and then reticently comes in and helps. Becomes the hero of the day. They get paid. And he has no identity anymore. He doesn't know who he is. He's just this. The Guardians, they're barely in this movie. And it kind of sucks. They're given an emergency to go run off to do, and then they very quickly get rid of Thor because he's a nuisance to them at this particular moment because of the screaming goats. Yes, I know. Screaming goats. And not gonna lie, I laughed at it quite a bit at first. I did, not gonna lie. I laughed at it. And honestly, it got a little bit grating over time, but it was still kind of funny. I wish that the goats had been used to a bigger degree or had another reason other than just, hey, this was in the comics at some point. They served no purpose, realistically. They had a tiny purpose in being an escape mechanism and had a tiny connection to Korg. I mean, ever so slightly, because he knew the secret whistle to summon them. Everything about this movie knows what it's going to do. There's no mystery. And it's all just waiting to get to its part. That's it. It's like everything is already set up, ready to go, just waiting to happen. It's like the kids get kidnapped, and Gore does the whole thing. Thor's gonna come for us. I'm counting on it. They literally did that. Although it's clearly been shown that Gore will just flat out assault a planet, kill people, kill their god, no problem. But when it came to Thor and the gods of Asgard, he decides to play games. Kidnaps the kid, waits for them to come to him. He could have killed all of them right then and there. They really didn't have a way to kill him at the time. He had the complete ability of surprise, and he probably could have killed at least a few of them. Yeah, I know he killed some Asgardians, but he could have overwhelmed them with sheer numbers of shadow creatures, even with 2 Thors and a Valkyrie. And by the way, Valkyrie has 0 established reason for doing anything in this movie. You get a tiny hint of her being bored at being king, and therefore she wants to get out there and battle some more. That's it. That's all it is. Abandons the town, leaves with Thor and Thor to go wander the galaxy with no clue on where to find Gore or the kids. And even when they have a serious scene, like Thor trying to say, hey, I'm going to go get your kids, he plays into that bullshit again. And he starts doing the spiel. And they fall for it, and then he blasts out through the roof with the Bifrost, and then he falls flat on his face outside. Because the Bifrost isn't working right, because he has made Stormbreaker jealous by wanting Mjolnir back. So Mjolnir's back together and has bonded with Jane to make Lady Thor / Mighty Thor, which, by the way, she just starts calling herself that. Nobody really establishes that's what she'd be called. Also, that takes the wind out of so much, because the reason Lady Thor existed, or Mighty Thor existed, is because Odin's son was no longer worthy to hold the hammer. He didn't have the power imbued within him. He was strong, but he didn't have his powers. The hammer made him Thor. So when Jane was worthy, she picks up the hammer off the moon, gains the powers, shows up. Takes a while before anybody knows it's Jane. They kept true to her storyline. She has cancer, but like the only reason she even goes to New Asgard is because she thinks, oh, hey, maybe I can use Mjolnir to somehow cure me. Not, hey, maybe I should just call my friends in New Asgard and see if they have any technology that can cure me of my cancer, because nothing else is doing it. She has strangely incurable cancer for some reason. They establish her mom had cancer and died. So now Jane has cancer and is dying. Nothing's helping. Chemo's not working. Nothing like that. If they had established that she had gotten the hammer, had been acting as Thor, and the reason why she's still dying is that the powers of Thor get rid of the chemo, just like in the comics, bingo. Now, they do that eventually, but that would have been the good excuse as to why the chemo wasn't working in the first place. They don't do that. By the way, Vision is out there somewhere. The other reason why Jane can even wield Mjolnir is not because she's worthy, but because Thor, drunk one night, told Mjolnir to protect Jane. And it added to its spell that it would protect Jane if it could. So when she shows up at New Asgard to look at the broken pieces of Mjolnir, it starts shaking. And they cut the scene where she actually gains the powers for the first time. It's been filmed. It was done. They cut it from the movie because they wanted to save the reveal, even though the reveal was in the trailer completely. That's so stupid. Don't take something out of the movie when you've already spoiled the reveal in the trailer. It's fucking retarded. I'm going to say this. I know this is a non sequitur. Taika Waititi needs to never touch Thor again. I love the first 3 Thor movies. Thor 2 is weaker. It's a little weaker, but it's a really serious movie and has serious consequences. Ragnarok, less serious movie, but because of what happens with Loki, because of what happens with Thor's character, what happens with Hela, there was consequences to that movie, even though it was silly. This movie has no consequences. None. Nothing. Gore, other than Gore killed a whole bunch of gods and caused some chaos in the galaxy, we don't see that. We don't see that chaos. This movie needed a movie before it to set up Gore's storyline. So I'm going to talk about how this should have been fixed, because this movie, as it sits, fun, but not good. It is not a good movie. It is a bad movie. And it is put together badly. It is edited badly. The characters are written badly. These stories were slapped together in a weird slapdash way. So you had two very long-running characters in the comics. When I say long-running, I mean more than one movie's worth. Gore is a galactic problem. Jane becoming Thor is a big moment, because Odin's son is now known as Odin's son because he's no longer Thor until he becomes worthy. The reason that he's not worthy is in the comics is because he is told by Nick Fury, whispered in his ear, he said Gore was right. And that got to Thor in his fucking head that he could not be worthy because all gods are corrupt and only worry about themselves. That essence of that storyline is completely devoid of this. They try. They do show you a whole bunch of fucking gods. A whole lot of gods. All being nonchalant, not giving a shit what happened to their people, not giving a shit what happened to the galaxy, only worried about themselves. They show you that, and they tell you that. But it's all done in one scene. It's not like we don't see it across the galaxy. We don't see Gore going on this slaughter spree. We see the aftermath. But if Disney had never fired James Gunn from Guardians 3, and Guardians 3 came out before this movie and gave us the setup to Gore, they could have had that. They could have 100% given us a movie setting up what happened to Gore, setting up the death of the gods across the galaxy, and Thor finding out about it, and then all of that stuff starts getting in his head. This Thor doesn't care about being worthy until he picks up Mjolnir later in the movie, and it's fine. He gets selfish and worries about the fact that Mjolnir is bonded to Jane, and he's like, I want my hammer back. And then Stormbreaker, who is now sentient, can float around on its own, can have an attitude, can choose whether or not the Bifrost works. By the way, can grow when planted in the ground. That was cool. Then they made some stupid joke where Thor rides off on Stormbreaker like it's a fucking witch on a broom. Kinda funny, but also strange. Because how does the hammer fly? Mjolnir was thrown in the direction. This one, Stormbreaker can just float, which was never established. At least Mjolnir's powers all established. Jane wields Mjolnir just like Thor did, just like Captain America did, but with the added powers of the hammer breaking apart and shooting into controllable shards and then coming back, which comes into play in the final battle as well. Not just every battle, but the final battle, it does have a very important thing that happens. I don't want to spoil everything, but there's one thing of it there. But they resolve everything of these two stories in one movie. They could have set up Gore going across the galaxy killing gods. They could have set up Thor's issues with thinking that he's not worthy still. We also could have gotten the idea of him working out. We get a very quick montage of him losing weight. It's like, boom, boom, done. If we had a full Guardians movie with Thor, if we had an Asgardians of the Galaxy movie to build all that up, to give us the time of Thor with the Guardians, to the point where they're like, they both love him and are done with him because he's so obnoxious. And then we could have had Thor becoming very unworthy. And then Jane becoming necessary on Earth and becoming Lady Thor long before Gore showed up. So it wouldn't just be oh, we're both here at the same time. We got two Thors. Yay! Everything happens on top of each other and everything happens exactly when it has to happen. There's one minor consequence that sticks around, and that's the fact that Lady Sif, which cool that Jamie Alexander's back. I'm okay. She gets an arm cut off. But then, because she was already a very super serious character, they had to make her a moron. Everybody who was a super serious character, moron. Valkyrie, whatever whatever she built up for wanting to be responsible, now wanting to be in charge of Asgard and take care of their people, who gives a shit? I'm gonna go run off and go probably die trying to get our kids back. Okay, it's cool. As long as I die in battle, I get to go to Valhalla, which they talk about Valhalla a few times. Okay. No consequence for Valhalla being a thing now. Except maybe in the future. Spoilers for end credit scene all the way at the end. Look it up on YouTube. Don't bother waiting through the very long credits just to see it. Look it up on YouTube. It's a whole big thing. Jane ends up in Valhalla, is greeted by Heimdall. Yay. And yes, I know Jane comes back as a Valkyrie later. That's a cool plan. But we literally got roughly a day and a half with Jane as Thor. Not really epic. And she did sacrifice herself technically to win. Technically speaking. But not really. I don't know. I think that this movie did too much in one shot. Resolved everything within one movie that was built up within one movie. There was virtually no character growth for anybody. Thor, while I loved Ragnarok, and then I loved what happened to Thor in Endgame. Endgame / Infinity War Thor was back kind of true to form. He was more serious. Kind of jokey, but even in his depression, even in his PTSD due to Thanos, he could manage something. But even when he left with the Asgardians, he wanted to go... Asgardians. When he left with the Guardians, he went to go figure out who he was. Unfortunately, who he was is a big doof who doesn't do right, technically speaking. He does good, but never really does right. Who has virtually no honor, no anything. He's just a big doof with a axe who comes to save the day. And all of that is rushed. Everything the trailer was kind of selling was essentially fake. This whole working on me, I've lost all this weight, I've moved through my depression, I've been meditating, I've rediscovered who I am, not just as Thor, but as a god. Because I lost everything. It is what it is. And this movie throws all that away to just make him stupid. And make him a dumb meatbag who just wants to throw his hammer at things. He does empathize. Like, the final moments with Thor, when he realizes that Jane is dying, like properly dying in the moment, that was real. That was the Thor we all know. Proper. Everything before this was Thor pretending to be something he wasn't. So he went out he left Earth in the first place to go figure out who he was, except all he did was pretend to be something he wasn't. And then he finally really becomes Thor for roughly 5 minutes in the movie, and then instantly goes back to being a jackass. A jackass with someone to protect, I guess. A person to mold and help become a person as well. All forced. Kind of stupid. We finally get to see one of the biggest and most important entities in the Marvel universe. The literal embodiment of the universe. Eternity. And it's little more than Shenron, the dragon. If you can find your way to eternity, you get a wish for anything. Eternity has no choice but to grant you this wish because you found your way to them. And the consequences of that, we'll see what happens. Whether there are any. I don't know. Gore dies. Of course. For kind of stupid reason. Marvel has had a one-off villain problem ever since Thanos has been gone. Now, they kind of had that problem already. Introducing and killing off a main villain within each movie. No carryover villains, with the exception of just minor bad guys who come back. Thanos was the only one who was a problem for a while, even behind the scenes. Gore could have been that. Gore could have been doing his thing all the way back in Infinity War. So when Asgard was destroyed and Odin was gone, we could have had him in the background doing stuff in post-credit scenes. We could have been introducing that. The whole all gods must die could have happened at the end of Ragnarok. Because it doesn't tie into anything else in this movie. That could have been a setup, like Odin's gone, Hela's gone, Asgard's gone, Thanos is still doing his thing, but Gore could have been creeping up then. And then in any other movie that would be slightly galactic, we could be hearing about random things, people being killed, gods being killed. There was so much that should have been built up to make this story matter, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't. It doesn't matter in this movie, and it won't matter into the future. All the gods that were killed, who cares? We still got plenty of gods. We get a setup for one of Thor's main foils in the comics, and someone who's an Avenger off and on, you know. I like the balance that Ragnarok strikes between being a very serious movie and being a very silly movie. Thor being really fucked up, and then trying to come to terms with everything, with his loss in that movie, and then trying to turn it around through Infinity War and Endgame. All of that completely undone, and I was just a moron. And it's Taika Waititi makes good series, makes good movies, but he also basically just does dark comedies, and this was essentially meant to be a dark comedy when everything about this is very serious. Jane having cancer, joke. Gore going around killing all the gods on this mission to wipe out every god in this thing, every entity that's above normal mortals, joke. Even though he's the only serious thing about this movie, still a joke, made to be a joke. The gods don't care, which is part of it, which makes sense, but gods, totally a joke. Odin, always very serious. Zeus, fucking joke. And then they turn the entire reason that they went to ask the gods for help into just stealing a weapon when they already have very effective and powerful weapons. Right before the final battle, this is so dumb. They try to go fight Gore. They try to get the kids back. They end up losing. Valkyrie ends up stabbed. Jane is really wrecked. And it's just Thor, and he's not doing great on his own. Because Gore is powerful and has lots of powers at his disposal, making it very hard for just 3 people to take him on. It's like he's plowed through hundreds of gods at this point, in entire civilizations. These 3 people are going to stop him? No, they fail. So he needs Stormbreaker. He needs it. He needs the Bifrost to get to eternity. So his plan is very much like Thanos. I seek the ultimate power. I wipe out all the gods. I go to eternity. I make the wish for all gods to be wiped out. Cool. Pretty sure that's not what he was doing in the comics. I think he was just literally wanted to tear them all apart. Cut them into pieces, whatever. And he eventually just gets to Thor. Which, mind you, in the comics, Odin and Freya still exist. So it's kind of hard to deal with that. But, he just needs this one solution. Get to eternity, it's all over. So the main reason I guess if he knew about eternity, he probably should have just started with trying to get to Thor. Which would have gotten him there in the first place, because that's exactly what happens. He beats them down. Thor summons the Bifrost to go home to Earth. Gore grabs Stormbreaker, and everybody else shoots up through the Bifrost, and they're left behind. So now he's got Stormbreaker. He can make it to the center of the universe, or the galaxy, whatever it is, to open the gates of eternity. which we get to see this really cool room, almost like a chapel that assembles itself, which has eternity at one end and then a lot of the lesser gods. You got a Watcher, you got Living Tribunal, and a couple other people on top of my head I can't think of. One Celestial that's there for some strange reason. They're just statues, and you just literally use the Bifrost to open the gate, and you just have to sit there and do its thing and open up, and eventually it'll open. It's not just gone for whatever reason, because you need the time, right? So what I was getting to, the stupid part, Thor no longer has Stormbreaker, but he still needs to be able to get across the galaxy in a blink of an eye to still rescue the kids, which Gore still has for some reason. He's got what he needs, but he keeps the kids around. He frankly would have and should have killed all the kids, even though I know, daughter, blah, blah, blah. He's kind of pure evil right now. There's no reason. He got what he needed. There's no reason for him to let the kids alive at this point. No reason. We get a Shazam moment where Thor gives his power to all the kids, and then they all go ham fighting an army. So you get an army of little kids, which are mostly all related to other actors and or people who work for Marvel. Pretty cool. Though Chris Hemsworth has 2 kids of his in this movie, including one who will probably continue to play a character from here on out. Which, fine. He's still playing Thor, so he's the only one of the originals who's still keen on playing the character. But he has no way to get back to where Gore is. So he uses Zeus's lightning bolt that he stole earlier, which can teleport conveniently, which he knows how to use because whatever. But the dumb thing is, Jane can't transform again because she'll die otherwise. They're trying to keep her alive as long as possible. She agrees to not use Mjolnir anymore. Mjolnir gets left on Earth, and Thor just goes to fight with a lightning bolt. This whole movie he's been bitching about wanting Mjolnir back. He can literally have Mjolnir and use it, because that's never changed. But he leaves it there. Because Jane has to come and save him at the end. How does Jane come and save him at the end? Well, Mjolnir knows something's wrong, floats to her, just like Stormbreaker did earlier. He's like, hey, grab me, we gotta go. And then she just gets there. In theory, she rode Valkyrie's Pegasus, and that allows you to jump to the center of the galaxy universe. Just there, so that she can help. So we get 2 Thors trying to settle this, and we have to get the moment where Jane dies, of course, to finally actually get the only true serious moment in this entire movie. Which is still, actually, it's a great moment in the movie, not gonna lie. I appreciate it. I do, honestly. But yeah, much like the played out version of Ragnarok that they did during the Asgardian playwright thing, just like they did back in Ragnarok. They have exactly the same characters, which is great. Matt Damon comes back, Sam Neill comes back, the other Hemsworth brother comes back. They add Melissa McCarthy as Hela. That right there should tell you everything that's wrong with this movie. By the way, I don't like Melissa McCarthy. I thought she was fine for a while, and then I just got tired of her playing the same horse shit role over and over and over. And I know she's done some serious roles, and I've seen some movies where that she's playing more serious roles. I don't care. I just don't like her anymore. And in this, the fact that they had her come in to play a very hammed up version of Hela for this really stupid play group just emphasizes that this movie was never going to take itself seriously. And I just can't. Like I said, I don't think I like this movie. I don't like it, and I don't dislike it. It's definitely not good, but it's kind of fun, and it's funny, but I don't want to watch it again. I would rewatch any of the 3 if not all of the 3 Thor movies that came before it. But I won't watch this again. And I'll put it out here, because I rewatched it this week, I think Multiverse of Madness, despite its issues, was a better movie. In general, was a better movie. Pacing was way better, even though there were some issues with the pacing. The characterizations, much better, even though some things were trimmed and cut down. And if you didn't see WandaVision, you wouldn't understand why Wanda's doing what she's doing. This movie, you know how you fix this, other than having a Guardians movie? I don't know, a 6-episode series, perhaps, setting up this movie, either with gore or both. Set it, like, literally, this is the problem now. Marvel has 2 different things going on. The Disney Plus series, which act very much like a comic book, very serialized, building up one story over a longer period of time. And then they have the movies that are doing a very long story on a whole bunch of short things that happen that may or may not even tie into the overall thing. And I think what they used to do before things really got out of control with Disney, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did a whole lot of building up the story in between mainline Marvel movies. We have Disney Plus series for a lot of heroes that most people don't know or don't care about, and we leave our mainline heroes to be in the movies, where the movies are now doing one-off stories, and they've rushed to tell you everything in a 2-hour period, when the movies should be used as the larger thing that the TV shows are built up to. WandaVision set up Multiverse of Madness. Technically, Loki even set up Multiverse of Madness. All of those things culminated in what happened between Spider-Man No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, plus whatever else comes up. The TV shows did that, not the movies. The movies were the end result of what TV shows did. This movie stands alone on top of nothing established, essentially, and it has a lot of backstory to fill in to make it happen. The Gore storyline needed more time. The Jane Foster Thor storyline needed more time. They could have had a story, a 6-episode story, if not a little longer. The 6 episodes is really kind of ruining it. They need to stretch out to like 9. Make the story make more sense, give it more time to breathe, and don't fuck with the pacing. That's what I'm getting at. This movie rushed to get through 2 very serious storylines, and then rushed to smash them together to just make one big pile of dog shit, and no one was the better for any of it. Thor at the end of this movie is only different in that he has one less person that he cared about in his life. More or less. Still doing the same shit. Actually less, because he no longer has the Guardians. If we had gotten Thor with the Guardians, either in their own movie or a series, and then it culminates in this movie where he gets involved with the Gore storyline, and if we got the Gore storyline fulfilled elsewhere, so that we see how he got to what he did, even seeing other civilizations getting wrecked, and actually maybe, I don't know, get the gods taking it seriously to where the news finally gets to Thor. Eliminate the whole kidnapping the kids storyline. Stop putting kids in the mainline stories of Star Wars or Marvel. Please stop. And adding a fuckload of them, really stupid. Because all they were was a plot device. They weren't characters. They were just a plot device, and I hated it. I hated it. The one kid that did matter, fine. The rest of the kids, no. Build out the story through a series, culminating in a movie that wraps up those stories. So what they did with the original run of Phase 1 going into Thanos and all that, not even Phase 1, but everything leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. all of those stories, the culmination of all of those independent stories came together. Characters, storylines, motivations, all of it culminated over the course of 19 some odd movies. These movies are coming off of the hands of one movie with no other things built up except for what you're shown on screen, which is rushed. And this movie suffered hard for it. Now, Guardians 3, which James Gunn is coming back for, will be a better movie. Because James Gunn, whether it's Suicide Squad, the original 2 Guardians movies, or Peacemaker, really on top of his game when it comes to comic book stuff and writing characters and developing stories. Taika Waititi, he needs to be done with Disney. I would not, before this, I would have said I liked what he did in Ragnarok. I still like what he did in Ragnarok. But he took that and ran with it when he should have said, okay, I did that here. That character doesn't exist this way anymore. He's now this character. But he couldn't. And I like Taika Waititi. I do. This should be his last Marvel movie. Unless he's literally going to do something that's meant to be a joke. Because he took 2 very serious storylines from a very serious character, several very serious characters, and made everything about it a joke. Oh, and I hate Thor's new armor. The blue and gold, so stupid looking. So ugly, and it never gets dirty. His cape gets burned, but the actual armor, despite everything he went through, never gets dirty. I would have much rather him keep the cool Viking Asgard gear he was wearing for the brief moments at the beginning. Even his Ravager outfit, much cooler, and I know that's a Thunderstrike reference, which people seem to keep forgetting, this Thunderstrike reference. All very cool. His actual armor that he wears through most of this movie, stupid, don't like it. Don't like it. His black armor or his gray armor from Endgame or Infinity War, much better looking. This, I know it's comic accurate to at least one run of the comics, but they wanted to have a very different look between him and Lady Thor, which they had when they first run into each other. The only reason he summons this armor is so that he can look cooler and tougher than she does. He's jealous, he's petty, and he's an idiot. He doesn't know who he is, he talks out of his ass. All of those things are the opposite of his character development over the last 20 years. It's not even a result of his PTSD. That made sense when he was deflecting, when he was trying to take things seriously or deflecting from it, abdicating responsibility because he just couldn't deal with his own loss. He couldn't deal with what he did. This version of Thor is fake. Through and through. And then the one time he decides to be serious is when he's finally losing Jane and he stops caring about everything else but her in that moment. And that's the only time proper Thor was in this movie, establishing the very strange relationship with Mjolnir and Stormbreaker that made them like pets that he interacted with instead of a weapon that just chilled when he didn't need it. Very, very strange. And the fact that he accidentally enchanted Mjolnir, even though he didn't have the ability to do that at that point, all stupid, all dumb. They're just like, that's fun. Oh, let's do this too. No. Done with it. I'm done with these movies that just try too hard to be funny or fun, especially when it's a serious story to begin with. Some movies, I'm fine with it because there's room. This movie, especially from the trailer alone, while the trailer had some serious moments, really did set more of a serious tone. And for anyone who did know the stories, and I argue this on our podcast, go subscribe to the podcast, by the way, we talk about these things a lot. I do say that you can bend canon however you need to, and strictly relying to source material isn't necessary as long as you still tell a good story while basing it off of the source material. This tried to tell a good story, but in the end it told a story that didn't matter. It took characters that should be serious and made them jokes. It undid character development that already happened. Like, PTSD Thor would have been way better, because then he would have had something to lose. This Thor was just jealous and stupid to the point that he made his hammer or his axe jealous and stupid. No. Just no. And then he makes a dumb decision. It's like, he goes into battle with a weapon that he's not super familiar with. He does manage to battle Gore back using the Thunderbolt, with the kids also having lightning powers. But the fact that he could have taken Mjolnir and really done a number on it, and just continued to do the same thing. And Jane probably would have survived. Eternity probably wouldn't have been reached. Gore probably would have been killed, and the kids would have been rescued. And he would have had both hammers, a lightning bolt, a dead Gore, and all the kids back. But, you know, this is Monday morning quarterbacking, when it should have been somebody actually... And I know Kevin Feige is supposed to be on top of this stuff, but he's got to step in a little bit sometimes. The producers on this movie, which Chris Helmsworth was one, all need to be slapped. Like, hey, you need to take these characters more serious, because we're done with the jokey nonsense. You can fit it in. If you want a comic relief character, you had it. You had fucking Korg. Korg was the comic relief there. You had Valkyrie, who was a joke, and then she straightened her shit out, became King. I know everybody cares. King Valkyrie. It's fine. It really doesn't matter. Who cares? She abdicates her duties as king so fast to just go along to have a battle because she's tired of paperwork, which mindly we only see in a montage, a very fast montage of her kind of being bored with being a ruler. And then everyone has the knowledge they need to have in the moment, with the exception of Jane, who doesn't know fuck all, except how to use a hammer. We'd never heard anything about other gods, and now they all exist. Everybody knows about them. Everyone knows where eternity is. It's just... No. No. If I'm going to give it a letter grade, I'm going to give it a D. It's going to be a hard, no pun intended, D minus. It's not a full-on F like Eternals. Eternals was really bad, all in all. But I'll say this. Eternals, as a story, from beginning to end, made more sense than what this movie did to just make stuff happen. In Eternals, things didn't just happen. There was reasons behind them. This movie, stuff just happens, and then we go back to square one at the end. -1 Jane Foster. Yeah. So, either way, I know this is a long one, but I'll probably edit out a lot of it. I don't even know how many ums and oohs I'm going to have there. So guys, like and subscribe. I know you guys have been wondering why I haven't had any build content and stuff like that. I'm going to talk about that sometime soon. I actually need to get back to reviewing. Now that I have very large train bots out of my way, I have a whole bunch of other stuff I have to review. But I wanted to talk about this before I did the podcast, which we're going to have to do. Please subscribe to the podcast if you want to. Now You Made It Awkward podcast. I usually link that. Talk about nerd culture, stuff like that, and pop culture, and or politics and life in general, and how things are going and whatnot like that. So please come join it. But I'm going to leave it at that, guys. And if you haven't seen this movie and you watch this, okay, don't waste your money in the theater. Speak with your dollar. Don't watch it in the theater. Wait till it comes out on Disney Plus, because you're already paying for that. So I even told my cousin today, who really wanted to know, I'm like, do not waste your money going to the theater on this one. Watch it at home. It's not worth it. It just isn't. Multiverse of Madness, significantly more worth it. This movie, nope. I'll probably never watch it again. Don't even care. It's like, what it did, I just don't care. I just don't. Ms. Marvel is better than this movie. Moon Knight was better than this movie. And I'm going to leave it at that. See you guys later. Remember, as always, keep on nerding.